He was just a single father, scraping by day to day, barely managing to keep the lights on and his little boy fed. Life hadn't been kind to Miles Cooper, and the nights, they were the hardest, quiet, lonely, and relentless. So when the phone rang at 2 a.m., most people would have rolled over and ignored it. But not Miles. That one wrong number, that midnight call into the storm, would lead him somewhere he never expected, and end up changing 3 lives forever. If you believe in second chances, in the quiet courage of simply showing up, then settle in. This is a story of hearts cracked open by grief, and gently stitched back together by compassion. Let's begin. The rain didn't come gently that night. It pounded like a warning against the old tin roof of Miles' small, one-story house on the outskirts of Trenton, New Jersey. Miles had just finished the dishes, his hands still raw from a long warehouse shift. He smelled of motor oil, cardboard, and exhaustion. The clock on the microwave glowed 1:57 a.m. He should have been asleep hours ago. But his son, little Eli, had another nightmare, one of many lately. It had taken a warm blanket, half a grilled cheese, and looping ocean wave sounds on an old tablet to lull him back to sleep. Now the house was quiet again, except for the constant murmur of rain. Miles poured the last of the stale coffee into his chipped mug, and then the phone rang. He stared at the screen. Asterisk, asterisk, unknown caller, asterisk, asterisk. 2:00 a.m. It should have gone to voicemail. No one calls with good news at that hour, but something deep inside him, a feeling he couldn't name, made him answer. "Hello," he said, his voice low and rough. There was a pause. Then came a woman's voice, cracked and unsteady. "Please don't hang up. Just come. 1425 Willow Creek. I can't breathe, please." And just like that, the call dropped. Miles stood in silence. He could have dismissed it. A prank call, maybe even a wrong number. But something about her voice. It hadn't been fake. It was the sound of someone unraveling. He stepped into Eli's room. The boy was curled beneath his space-themed blanket, clinging to a stuffed bear like it was the last safe thing in the world. Miles gently brushed his son's hair back and whispered an apology he didn't fully understand. By 2:07 a.m., his old truck was rumbling down rain-slicked roads, its headlights cutting through sheets of water. He followed the GPS to Willow Creek Drive, winding past moss-covered gates and forgotten estates nestled in the wooded hills. When he finally arrived, the mailbox was rusted and nearly swallowed by ivy. 1425 Willow Creek. No gate, just a narrow driveway climbing into shadows between towering oaks. He hesitated. His heart thundered. This could be anything, a setup, a mistake. But again, he remembered that voice. The mansion, if you could still call it that, emerged like a ghost from another time. Moss clung to the stone walls. The shutters hung crooked. The porch sagged, and the brass knocker was tarnished with time. But the porch light was on. Miles stepped out into the storm, climbed the steps, and knocked. Nothing. Just as he raised his hand again, the door creaked open. She stood there barefoot, wearing a silk nightgown soaked at the hem. Her hair clung to her face, and her eyes were swollen from crying. In one hand, she held a half-empty glass of amber liquid, trembling. "You're not him," she whispered. "No," Miles replied gently. "I got a call. A woman sounded in distress. Gave this address." She blinked, looked past him into the storm. Then, the glass slipped from her hand and shattered at her feet. I called my therapist," she murmured. "I must have hit the wrong number." Her knees gave out. Miles caught her before she hit the ground, arms instinctively wrapping around her fragile frame. He guided her inside, past the broken glass, into a grand living room that hadn't seen warmth in years. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, knelt beside her, and asked softly, "Do you want me to call someone?" She shook her head. "There's no one left." And it wasn't drunkenness. It was grief, the kind that wears you down from the inside out. Her eyes were too clear, too tired, too real. "Do you have a name?" she asked, after a long silence. "Miles Cooper." "And you just came. Didn't feel right not to." She looked at him. Asterisk really asterisk looked. and something in her expression shifted, like a cracked mirror catching the first glimmer of sunrise. "I'm Alina Royce," she said, "and I haven't let a soul into this house in 4 years." As Miles got the fireplace going, the storm softened outside. Alina sat quietly with a cup of tea, staring into the growing flame. "Why did you stay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miles paused. "Because someone sounded like they didn't want to be alone, and I know what that feels like." For a moment, there was peace between them, a silence that didn't ache. "You don't have to leave yet," she said softly. If you'd like to stay a while." He nodded, sat back down, and something began, not loud or sudden, but quiet, honest, human. Morning came gently. The mansion looked less haunted in daylight, but no less lonely. Light filtered through dusty curtains and danced across faded wooden floors. Miles stirred in the armchair, waking slowly. Across from him, Alina still sat on the velvet couch, upright but asleep, the blanket falling from one shoulder like a forgotten promise. He checked his phone, just before 7 a.m. A few messages from Mrs. Henley, the neighbor who watched Eli. He texted her back. "All okay. Be home soon." Alina stirred. "You stayed. Didn't feel right to leave," he said. She looked down. "I should be embarrassed. I must have fallen asleep mid-sentence." "No need," Miles said gently. "You were tired." Alina clutched the blanket tighter, her eyes on the dying embers. "I'm not used to people staying." Miles hesitated. "Do you want me to go?" She opened her mouth, then paused. "No, not yet." In the kitchen, dusty from disuse, Miles found a French press and a sealed bag of dark roast. The coffee turned out to be surprisingly good. Leaning against the counter, Alina asked, "You ever been here before?" Miles nodded. "Once. Delivered stone tiles years ago. Didn't realize it was this house." She smiled faintly. "My mother's garden conservatory. She believed beauty could fix anything." "Could it?" he asked. Not the kind she meant. Her voice, her face, there was fragility there, but also steel. Not just grief, but endurance. Miles asked quietly, "Can I ask what happened?" She traced the rim of her mug. "A flight to Aspen. My parents, my little brother, they went ahead. I was supposed to follow the next day." Her voice dropped. The weather turned. Their plane went down. No survivors. "I'm so sorry," Miles said. "Everyone was. For a while. Then the sympathy stopped. The calls faded. People moved on." "But you didn't," he said. "I disappeared," she corrected. "Had money. Had a name. But no reason to speak. No one to say it to." She looked at her hands. "Until last night. Until I panicked." Miles leaned closer. "You didn't panic. You reached out. That's different." She tilted her head, considering his words. "Maybe. But I still called the wrong number." He smiled gently. "Or maybe the right one. Just not the one you expected." And for the first time in years, something in her softened. Later, she gave him a brief tour of the house. Faded portraits lined the halls, frozen moments of a family lost to time. One painting caught his eye. A young boy stood next to a half-wolf dog, smiling mischievously. "Your brother?" Miles asked. Alina nodded. "Charlie. He could always make me laugh, until I snorted." Miles chuckled. "That's a rare gift." They reached the conservatory, glass walls clouded with grime, but still letting light in. Ferns and forgotten vines had overrun the space, wild and beautiful. "This used to be my favorite place," she whispered, "before I stopped growing things." Miles looked around. "You ever think about starting again?" She shrugged. "What for? Who would see it?" "You," he said simply. At the door, Alina hesitated. "Thank you for coming, even if it wasn't meant to be you." "You're welcome." Miles paused. "I left my son with a neighbor to check on a stranger in the storm. Most people would call that crazy. But you did it anyway," she said, smiling gently. "Sometimes people just need someone to show up." She nodded then, after a moment. Would you come back? Maybe help with the garden? Miles smiled. If the coffee's this good next time. She laughed quietly. Deal. As he drove down the winding road, Miles glanced in the rearview mirror. The mansion still stood, but now it didn't feel so empty. Someone inside, who hadn't asked anyone to stay in 4 long years, just had. And something in Miles had changed too. Not loudly, not suddenly, but deeply. Because sometimes the wrong number is the beginning of everything right. Hey, buddy, Miles said softly, crouching beside his son. Sometimes people leave because they don't know how to stay. That's not your fault. Eli didn't say much. He just looked at his dad with quiet eyes and placed a small red toy car on the floor. You came back, he whispered. Miles smiled. Always. That night, long after Eli had fallen asleep, his little hand resting on a plastic fire truck, Miles sat alone at the kitchen table. A mug of tea sat cooling beside him. His phone lit the room more than the lamp did. He stared at the contact saved simply as unknown. Alina. His thumb hovered. Then he pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Miles, she said. Hey, he replied, voice gentle. Hope it's okay I called. More than okay, she said, almost relieved. I was hoping you might. He hesitated, then added. Was wondering, does the garden still need help? A soft laugh floated through the receiver. It needs more than help. It needs a resurrection. She paused. I've got Saturday off. Come by. I'll make coffee. Just like that. He was going back. Saturday morning broke bright and clear, kissed with early spring sunlight. Eli insisted on coming. Miles hesitated. Alina hadn't really met him yet, not properly. Would it be too much? But there was something about the quiet hope on Eli's face that made him nod. They pulled up just past 9. Eli stared out the window, eyes wide. It looks like a castle, he whispered. Alina was already waiting at the door before they could even knock. Dressed in jeans, rolled sleeves, gardening gloves, there was a quiet energy to her. She looked more alive than the first day they'd met. You must be Eli, she said, crouching a little to meet him. I've heard good things. Eli looked up at his dad, then gave a shy nod. I like castles. Well then, she smiled, you're going to love the greenhouse. The conservatory had long since faded from grandeur, a frame of glass and iron overrun with vines. Ivy stretched toward broken windows, as if trying to remember how the sun used to shine. Dry soil filled the planter beds. A cracked trowel lay forgotten under one of the tables. This is where my mom taught me Latin names for flowers, Alina said, brushing off a terracotta pot. I hated it back then, but now, maybe it was her way of holding on to things that bloom. Miles rolled up his sleeves. Let's give her something new to hold on to. As they worked, Eli wandered, touching leaves, whispering names of plants he made up on the spot. Crawley green, spiky snake vine, leafy sea monster. Alina laughed, a sudden, genuine burst of sound. It surprised even her. You don't laugh much, do you? Miles asked quietly. Not since, she paused, her voice soft. Since the sky fell. He didn't push. Some griefs don't need to be named right away. So instead, he pointed to a broken bench. This place has bones. We could sand these down, clear out the dead pots, maybe even start a new compost bed. She looked at him, amused. Are you offering to be my garden architect? Only if coffee is part of the payment plan, he grinned. As the day wore on, 3 of them moved together in quiet rhythm, digging, clearing, restoring. Alina worked like someone just learning how to live again. And for the first time in a long while, Miles saw Eli relax. At one point, Eli tugged on Alina's sleeve and pointed at a patch of moss. It's soft, he said, like the carpet in my favorite book. She knelt beside him and smiled. I used to sit right here with my brother. He made up stories about vines being dragons. Did he go away too? Eli asked. Alina swallowed hard. He did, but he still visits. She touched her chest gently. And here. Eli mirrored her gesture, then looked at Miles. Can I come next time too? Miles glanced at Alina. She gave a small nod. "Yeah, buddy," Miles said. "I think we'll be back." Later, as the sun dipped low, Eli played in the yard while Miles and Alina sat on the back steps, sipping coffee from mismatched mugs. "He's remarkable," she said, eyes on the boy. "Quiet but present. He sees things I don't." "He's always been that way," Miles said. "The world's loud for him, but he listens anyway." Alina nodded. "I forgot what that feels like, being heard." Miles looked at her, silent, and something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something foundational. A shared quiet, a recognition. "You know," she said, voice hushed, "when my family died, I thought I did too. I let the silence swallow me. It became everything." "And now?" he asked. She looked toward the greenhouse, where Eli waved a stick at the vines like a wizard, commanding a spell. "Now the silence is company." As they drove home, Eli gazed out the window. "She's not sad like before." "No," Miles said, glancing in the rearview mirror at the woman waving goodbye from the porch. "She's starting to grow again." And suddenly, the road ahead didn't look so long. It looked like it might be leading somewhere worth going. April arrived with warm winds and the scent of lilacs. Miles and Eli came to Willow Creek every other day after work and school, spending slow afternoons taming the greenhouse jungle. Alina was changing. Still reserved, yes, but the stillness in her no longer felt like loss. It felt like someone remembering how to live. Eli called her Miss Alina, then Miss Alina, and declared her keeper of plant names. She played along, jotting his imaginary plant species in the little leather notebook. Miles often stood off to the side, wiping sweat from his brow, just watching them, laughing, at ease. Whole. One afternoon, while Eli chased dragonflies, Alina cleared her throat. "I want to make you an offer," she said. Miles looked up. "Not marriage, I hope. I left my tux at the laundromat." She didn't laugh, just stared down at her gloves. "You've spent so much time here, working, breathing life into this place. I have space. The guest house. It's empty. I was thinking, maybe you and Eli could move in, just for a while." The words hit Miles like a stone tossed into still water, quiet at first, then rippling deep. "Alina," he started. She lifted a hand. "This isn't charity, or pity. I'm not trying to save you. But this house, it's been a tomb for too long. When you and Eli are here, it feels alive again. I want more of that." He hesitated. "I've worked for everything we have. No handouts, not for Eli's sake." "Then don't think of it as a handout," she said. "Think of it as a partnership. This place needs restoring. I need help. And you bring more than just labor. You bring intention." He blinked. "That's one hell of a job title." She smiled. "Consider it a residence with purpose." That night, long after Eli drifted to sleep among plastic dinosaurs and construction paper, Miles sat alone thinking. What was he so afraid of? Alina wasn't trying to fix him. Their current apartment was crumbling, leaky pipes, thin walls, noise Eli hated. Still to live in her space. What would they be? Guests? Workers? Something else? But then he remembered Eli, running barefoot through the garden, and Alina, asking him to stay. Not because she needed him, but because she wanted them there. The next morning, he packed a box of books and tools and drove to Willow Creek. Alina was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a light shawl. Miles held up the box. "I assume this means yes?" she asked. "It means we'll give it a try," he said. "But two conditions." She raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "One, shared responsibilities. I help with maintenance and bills." "Fair." "Two, Eli gets his own garden bed." Alina laughed. "Non-negotiable." That weekend, they moved in. The guest house was smaller, but beautiful. Stone walls, ivy-covered chimney, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of rosemary. Miles fixed leaky faucets. Eli painted a mural on the garden wall, trees, stars, animals, wild and brilliant. That Sunday, as fireflies began to blink, Alina and Miles sat on the back steps. I thought letting someone in would feel like losing something, she said. But it doesn't. It feels like I'm getting something back. Miles said nothing. He didn't need to. The moon rose full and bright above Willow Creek, and for the first time in years, every window glowed with light. Later that afternoon, Eli came sprinting through the conservatory doors, his small hand clutching something like a treasure. "Miss Alina, look," he called out, breathless with excitement. In his palm was a small, heart-shaped leaf, flecked with delicate purple spots. "I found it by the willow," he said. "It's magic." Alina crouched down to his level, eye studying the leaf as if it were a sacred relic. "You know," she murmured, "you might be right. I've never seen one quite like it." Eli's face lit up. "Can I put it in my nature book?" "Only if you give it a proper Latin name," she teased, grinning. "Hardicus purplina," Eli declared proudly. From across the room, Miles chuckled. "That has scientific journal cover written all over it." As they began to document the discovery, Miles quietly wandered out toward the west wing of the house, a part of the grounds he hadn't really explored. Ivy tangled thick over the path, and broken stones led to a hidden garden enclosed by rusted wrought iron fencing. Curious, he pushed open the old gate. It creaked in protest. Inside, he found a quiet alcove. Circular, intimate. Roses ran wild along trellises. A cracked marble bench rested beneath blooming dogwood branches, and in the center, a small stone pedestal. Atop it sat a weather-worn plaque, "To Charles Roy, who made everything grow." Miles let out a slow breath. A memory garden. He didn't touch anything. He didn't need to. The air itself held something sacred. There was grief here, but also love. Celebration. It wasn't built out of duty. It was made from affection. He didn't tell Alina he'd found it. Not yet. That evening, after dinner, they sat outside beneath old fairy lights Alina had dug out of a drawer and strung across the deck. The bulbs flickered gently, casting a soft amber hue over the night. Eli had fallen asleep in the hammock, a book half open across his chest. His latest drawing, Hardicus purplina, slipped onto the ground. "He's happy here," Alina whispered. Miles nodded. "Yeah, he hasn't needed to cling to me at night since we moved in." She turned to look at him. Really look. He was a man weathered by time, with sunlight on his skin and lines at the edges of his eyes. A man who had carried his child through the storm and kept going. "You're a good father." "Some days," Miles said quietly, "I feel like I'm just barely holding it together." "Maybe," she replied. "That's what being a good parent is. Holding it anyway." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was rich, like soil freshly turned. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not trying to fix me. For not asking me to be someone else." Miles gave her a small, warm smile. "You're not broken. You're just growing back." And they sat like that, until the stars bled into the sky, and the night wrapped gently around them like a warm quilt. Inside the house, a warm light glowed through the windows, soft and steady. The kind of light that says, someone stayed, someone belongs. But the storm didn't announce itself with thunder. It returned quietly, like dread building in the background. It settled in the air, making animals restless and people pause mid-sentence, unsure why. The morning had been peaceful. Eli and Alina painted ladybugs on rocks and lined them up on the conservatory windowsill. Miles spent the day mending the back gate and crafting a new trellis from barnwood. But by afternoon, the color drained from the sky. Not suddenly, just slowly, as if the world was quietly losing its light. Alina stood in the greenhouse doorway, arms crossed, watching the sky like someone waiting for an old wound to reopen. Miles joined her, wiping his hands on a rag. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. "Do you ever feel it?" she finally asked. "Like you know it's all about to fall apart again?" He studied her. "Sometimes, yeah." She tried to smile, but it stopped halfway to her eyes. "I'm going to make tea." Inside, Eli sat at the kitchen table, drawing a flower he'd imagined. When Alina entered, he looked up immediately, sensing the shift. "Is it going to thunder?" "I think so," she said, trying to keep her voice light. Will it be loud? She hesitated, then knelt beside him. It might be, but we're safe here. He nodded slowly, but his hand hovered uncertainly over his drawing, the line unfinished. Miles saw it too. Something in Alina's posture had changed. Braced, like she was waiting for the blow. Around 6, the rain began. At first a drizzle. Then, relentless sheets pounding the roof. Eli tried to be brave, but the sound was different here. Too loud. Too new. He paced, hands fluttering, eyes wide. It's not like at home, he whispered. It's louder. I don't like it. Miles crouched in front of him, steady. I know, but it's okay. It's just water, like the roof's getting a massage. That made Eli smile, just a little. Want to go to the main house? Miles asked. Might be quieter. Eli nodded. They ran through the rain, jackets over their heads. Alina opened the door, her expression shadowed with something deeper than worry. The storm's getting worse, Miles said, shaking off his coat. I know. Eli curled up on the couch, Alina beside him, her hand in his hair, trembling. Miles went to the kitchen, warmed milk with honey, brought it back. Then it hit, a violent crack of lightning. Thunder followed like a punch. Eli cried out, burying his face. Alina froze. Miles rushed to his son. You're okay, but I'm here. I want it to stop, Eli whispered. Alina didn't move. Her hand clutched the table, breath shallow, knuckles white. Alina, Miles called gently. No reply. She turned and walked quickly down the hall. He waited until Eli calmed, then followed her. She was in the study, pressed against a bookshelf, chest heaving. Breathe with me, he whispered. And out. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought I was okay, she choked out. I really did. You're okay, Miles said. But storms, they wake things up we've buried. She slid to the floor. I should have been on that plane. If I had, maybe. Don't go there, Miles said, kneeling. That wasn't your fault. Then why does it feel like I broke everything by surviving? Because grief lies, he said, voice firm. It tells us our survival cost something. But it didn't. You didn't take anything. You lost, too. I promised my mom I'd take care of Charlie. You were a sister, not a shield. She whispered. I'm scared of being whole again or forgetting. You're not forgetting, he said. You're making room. Later, as the storm quieted and the night softened, Alina watched Eli sleep peacefully. He trusted me, she said, even when I froze. He sees how much you care, Miles replied. She reached out, touched his arm. Thank you. For what? For staying. The next morning, everything smelled new. The house, the garden, even the wind felt reborn, and something deeper than comfort had started to grow. Trust. 2 days later, Alina was quieter. Still kind, still present, but a little more distant. She moved like someone playing a part, smiling in the right places, saying all the right things, but not quite there. Miles didn't push, but Eli noticed. Sitting on the porch, sketchpad in his lap, he stared toward the greenhouse. Miss Alina doesn't laugh anymore, he said softly. She will, Miles replied. Did I do something wrong? That one hit Miles hard. No, not at all. Eli pressed his pencil too hard. The tip snapped. She liked my dragon peppers. Later, Miles found a note on the kitchen counter. Eli's handwriting. Crooked. Careful. Dear Miss Alina, I don't know if you're sad because of the storm or because I'm not funny anymore, but I think you're brave. And I like your flowers. You can borrow my red crayon. It helps when I feel mad or gray. Love. Eli. Miles read it twice, heart tight, then folded it into a little brown envelope. That evening, he brought it to her. She read it silently, holding the page to her chest. He sees people, she whispered, even when they're hiding. I thought I was ready, she admitted, after the storm. But it's harder than I thought. Staying open. You don't owe anyone a perfect version of you, Miles said. But I want to be better. For Eli. For you. You are better, he said. You're just not finished yet. She looked down, smiling through a tear. He offered me his red crayon. "That's love," Miles said. "That's Eli." The next day, Alina walked to the garden. Eli was drawing, a tomato rocket hybrid, probably. "Hi," she said gently. He looked up, surprised, but calm. "I got your letter," she said, kneeling beside him. "Are you still sad?" "Sometimes," she replied, "but I'm trying to be brave. Like you." He considered her, then handed her the crayon again. "Keep it longer this time," he said. "Red is strong." She smiled. "Thank you." "I made you something too," Eli said, digging in his bag. He handed her a laminated card drawn in marker. "Official garden club membership. Miss Alina, level, brave flower." She took it like it was a medal. And maybe it was. They didn't build it all at once. But over the days that followed, something beautiful began to take shape. Alina and Miles sat at the old kitchen table, pencil marks smudging paper as dreams took form. She reached out to people she hadn't spoken to in years, therapists, teachers, designers, rebuilding not just a place, but a purpose. For the first time in what felt like forever, she embraced her name, not as a title from a high-rise life, not as a daughter of prestige, but as someone stepping forward with meaning. Alina Royce, Director, Willow Creek Center for Growing Things. The domain was secured, the blueprints drafted, meetings filled their calendars. But each morning, before the logistics and the emails, Alina still returned to the garden, to the quiet boy who once offered her crayons instead of questions, to the man who showed up when no one else did, to the life she never thought she'd be allowed to choose. One evening, after a long day of scrubbing out dust and cobwebs from a forgotten wing of the estate, Miles stepped into the conservatory, and something on the potting bench caught his eye. A small red flower pot, hand-painted, and inside it a folded card. "Miles, for showing up, for staying, for making space for us to grow. You are now officially master of quiet courage." And beneath that, drawn in bold crayon by Eli, was a badge, stars, a wrench, and a flower, crossed like a coat of arms. Miles chuckled, then blinked away something unspoken, and tucked the badge into his wallet, like it was treasure. That night, under the hush of a full moon, Willow Creek shimmered, not just with dew, but with a quiet sense of belonging. Hope stirred in the air like pollen, soft and certain. This wasn't just a homecoming. It was a return to herself. The revival of Willow Creek started as a whisper, but soon it was a chorus. The once-forgotten refuge began to hum again, with tools clinking, laughter echoing down the halls, blueprints being turned into beams and dreams. Therapists came to tour the space. Teachers sent messages of interest. Donations trickled in after Alina shared her vision quietly online. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding. But not all ghosts stayed buried. It was a quiet Wednesday when he appeared. Miles was out back, working soil into the beds of the new sensory garden. Alina was inside, prepping for a Zoom call with a children's wellness nonprofit. Then came the low crunch of tires on gravel. A sleek black BMW pulled into the drive, its polished metal catching the sunlight like it didn't belong there. And it knew it. The driver stepped out. Tailored jacket, designer shoes, and that air of someone who never questioned whether he should be somewhere, because he always was. Lucas Harrow. Miles wiped his hands on a towel, his instincts sharpening. "Can I help you?" he asked, calm but firm. Lucas barely looked at him. "You're the one who moved in," he said dismissively. "The gardener." "Something like that," Miles replied. Without another word, Lucas turned and walked toward the house. "I'm here for Alina." Alina stepped out of the study just as he reached the stairs. She froze. "Lucas." He opened his arms like time hadn't passed at all. "Alina. God, you look." He paused, studying her. "Different." "What are you doing here?" she asked, guarded. "I heard you were starting a little charity in your backyard," he said with a gleaming smile. "Had to see it for myself." Miles lingered in the hall, watchful. Alina's shoulders lifted, her stance steady. "It's not a charity," she said. "It's a center for families, for kids who need a safe place." Lucas shrugged. "The Alina I knew didn't really do dirt." Maybe you didn't know me as well as you thought, she replied, voice steady. He stepped closer, tone dipping low. You know, your name still means something. You could be anywhere, Paris, New York. Why bury yourself in this mausoleum? Because this mausoleum saved me, Alina answered, and it's going to save others. Lucas's gaze slid toward Miles. So this is the new project. Handyman turned life partner. Don't, Alina said, calm but unmistakably firm. Don't reduce people just because they live differently than you. Lucas scoffed. I'm just saying be careful. This place is your last name. Let the wrong people in, and it doesn't take much to ruin a reputation. Miles stepped forward, voice low but unshakable. You should go. Lucas smirked bitterly. Of course. The muscle speaks. But Alina stood taller now. Her voice carried grace and finality. I built a life with marble walls and perfect dinners and all the right names on my arm, and I was miserable. So no, I don't need protecting, and I don't need you. But I do need people who stay when it storms. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had no words. After he left, Alina stood quietly on the porch. Miles joined her in silence. That man, she said eventually, once asked me to marry him, on a yacht off the coast of Santorini. I'm guessing you said no. I said yes, she murmured. It lasted 6 weeks. My grief didn't match his image of me. Miles looked at her, surprised. I can't picture you on a yacht. Alina smiled faintly. Neither can I anymore. They stood together in the hush, the wind rustling the budding vines. Then she asked, Do you ever worry the past will come back and knock it all down? Every day, Miles replied, but I build anyway. That evening, Eli came home from school to find Alina sitting in the garden with an old box beside her, photographs, letters, keepsakes she hadn't touched in years. I want to tell you a story, she said as he curled up beside her, about someone I used to be and why I'm not her anymore. She spoke gently but honestly, about love that looked perfect but felt empty, about people who left when it got hard, about discovering that real strength isn't about shutting people out, but about letting the right ones in. Eli listened quietly. Then he picked up a worn photo of Alina and a man with warm eyes. He looks like you when you laugh, he said. Alina blinked, surprised. He was my best friend. He still is, Eli replied simply. That night, Miles found Alina standing barefoot among the garden blooms. The glass ceiling above them shimmered with stars. You stood up for yourself today, he said. I did, she nodded. Wasn't sure I had it in me. You've always had more in you than anyone ever gave you credit for, he replied. She reached out, her hand resting gently over his chest. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me. And in that quiet moment, under glass and stars and the soft breath of her blooming things, it wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about becoming. Together. The next morning, the sky looked too bright, the air too still, like the hush before a storm. Miles noticed it first in Eli. He sat at breakfast, barely touching his cereal, fidgeting with the sleeve of his hoodie. Alina had made his favorite muffins, but he didn't even look up. You all right, champ? Miles asked gently. Eli just shrugged. Just tired. But Miles knew that tone. It wasn't tired. It was worried. Later, Alina found him in the garden, sketching. I drew a monster, he muttered, closing the sketchbook quickly. It lives in people's heads. Makes them leave. Her heart clenched. Did someone say they were leaving? She asked gently. No, Eli said, voice barely audible. But that man with the car came, and grown-ups get weird when that happens. They forget things, like how to stay. She knelt beside him. Eli, listen to me, she said, her voice low and steady. When someone makes you feel like you don't belong, that's not about you. And when someone makes you feel safe, that's real, and it's not going anywhere. But by noon, Eli was gone. Miles noticed first. The garden bench was empty. His sketch pad fluttered in the breeze. Alina, he shouted, already running. Where's Eli? They searched everywhere, greenhouse, guest house, every room, every corner. Then Alina saw it. A broken latch on the side gate. A muddy sneaker print. They ran into the woods behind the estate. Branches clawed at their arms. The forest was thick, still damp from the last storm. He shuts down in unfamiliar places, Miles said. Or fixates. On what? The old train line. Miles remembered. He read about it. Said it's where the quiet goes. Alina's eyes sharpened. I know where that is. She found him first, sitting on the mossy edge of an old platform, knees hugged to his chest, backpack beside him like a companion. You found me fast, he murmured. You didn't want to hide, she said gently. You just didn't want to feel invisible. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I thought maybe if I disappeared first, it wouldn't hurt as much. She sat beside him, silent for a long beat. Then she wrapped her cardigan around his shoulders. When my brother died, she whispered, I pushed people away before they could leave me. But then, you gave me a red crayon. It was just a crayon. No, she smiled. It was a bridge. I see you, Eli, and I'm not leaving. Not even if the man with the car comes back. Especially not then. Miles appeared minutes later, breathless, hard in his throat. He dropped to his knees and hugged Eli tight. You scare me, bud. Sorry, Eli whispered. I thought you'd go away. Never, Miles said, voice fierce with love. Never. That evening, back on the porch, they wrapped Eli in a blanket and hot cocoa. Stars twinkling above. I think I don't like goodbyes, Eli whispered. Me neither, Alina said. Let's make a rule, no goodbyes here. Just see you tomorrow. Eli nodded. Miles wrapped his arms around them both. And in that soft, peaceful silence, the kind that only comes when people finally feel safe, Eli looked up and smiled. For Runaway, Miles said gently, you left a pretty clear trail. I meant to, Eli said. I wanted you to find me. Late into the night, after little Eli had drifted into sleep, Alina found herself alone at the edge of the garden. The moonlight cast a silver glow over the old stones, the arched gate, and the soil, earth that had once borne witness to sorrow, and now to rebirth. Miles stepped quietly beside her. You were amazing today, he said gently. She shook her head, a soft smile forming. No, I just followed what my heart told me. Exactly, he replied. She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. Do you think we can ever really be whole again? Miles reached up, brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. No, he said, but I think we can be real, and loved, and maybe that's even better. Alina didn't answer. Instead, she leaned into him slowly, cautiously, like the first flower daring to bloom after a long, bitter winter. No words were needed, just presence, just truth, the quiet understanding that this time, no one was leaving. 3 weeks after Eli's runaway scare, something incredible had happened at Willow Creek. The place hadn't just healed, it had transformed. The cracks didn't vanish, they became part of the story. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold, the estate had become more beautiful because of its wounds, not despite them. The greenhouse sparkled, not just from the sun glinting off the newly polished glass, but from the life blooming within. Wildflowers burst from fresh planters. Vines curled lovingly around handcrafted trellises. And along one wall, hand-painted tiles displayed names of children who had passed through. Eli, Hardicus, Maribel, Theo, and many others, each written in delightfully crooked, innocent letters. Alina stood near the garden wearing a sundress, her hair in a loose braid she'd stopped trying to perfect. In her hand was a clipboard. Around her, volunteers moved with joyful rhythm, spreading mulch, painting benches, preparing for tomorrow's grand unveiling. Do you know what today is? She asked Miles, who was hammering in the final slat on the sensory wall. He looked up, brow damp with sweat. If you say your birthday, I'm going to panic because I didn't get you anything. She laughed softly. Not quite. Today marks 100 days since you answered the wrong call. He paused, glanced around the place, then at her. Funny, he said. That wrong call turned out to be the best thing that ever happened. You were my rescue, she whispered. Miles looked into her eyes. You were mine too. Alina's eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with calm. She didn't need to fall apart to feel anymore. She'd learned the difference. In the main house, Eli sat at the kitchen table with his newest friend, Maya, a quiet girl his age who hadn't spoken a word since arriving a week ago. But with Eli, she had begun to communicate, through drawings, hand gestures, and the quiet language of trust. Today, two of them were making wind chimes from spoons and ribbons, soft music for gentle souls. Alina paused in the doorway, watching them. Her throat tightened. This, she realized, was what healing looked like. Not loud, not dramatic, but a quiet child humming while creating. A room that once echoed with loneliness now filled with the sound of hope. Later that afternoon, Alina hosted the very first staff meeting in the sunroom. It was just her, Miles, Rosa, a part-time counselor, and a volunteer therapist who came every Tuesday. They sipped sweet tea while reviewing tomorrow's launch schedule. Do we have enough chairs? Rosa asked, scanning her checklist. Enough to seat a small village, Miles joked. Press? Alina asked. They're coming. Rosa nodded. They want to feature your story. Alina tensed, but Miles reached out and lightly touched her hand. You control what gets shared, he assured. She nodded. I'm not hiding anymore. But I want the story to be about the kids. About this place. Not me. Then that's what it'll be, he said. As the evening settled in, Alina and Miles walked the property one last time, checking every detail. Solar lanterns glowed softly along the paths. The once broken fountain now trickled peacefully in the courtyard center. There was music in the air, wind in the trees, the sound of life returning to a place long silent. They paused at the memorial garden, now bursting with blooms. A new plaque had been placed beside Charlie's. This garden is for the ones who stayed, and the ones who found their way back. Alina ran her fingers over the engraving. Charlie would have loved this. Miles nodded. I think he does. She turned to him, emotion deep in her gaze. Do you think we can really do this? Build something that lasts? You already are, he said. I didn't plan any of this, she whispered. I was just trying to survive. Survival, Miles said, is where most beautiful things begin. Later that night, Eli curled up on the couch with Maya, tracing words of a book as Eli read aloud. Do you think we'll have balloons tomorrow? He asked, as Miles tucked him in. Too many. Miles grinned. What color do you want? Green, Eli said. Like growing. Perfect. Eli looked up. Do you think Miss Alina is happy now? Miles thought for a moment, then smiled. Yeah, she has the kind of smile that stays now, not the sad kind. In the conservatory, Alina stood barefoot among the blooms, watching fireflies dance through the warm night air. Miles came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. We're not who we used to be, she whispered. No, he agreed. We're better. What if something happens again? What if this is just temporary? Then we love it while it lasts, he replied, and fight to make it stay. I'm scared, she said quietly. So am I. But I'm not leaving. His words settled into her like roots, deep and anchoring. The night before the garden unveiling, the house glowed with quiet warmth. No alarms, no ghosts, just peace. Outside, beneath a sky brushed with stars, Miles turned to Alina and took her hand. There's something I want you to know, he said. No matter what happens tomorrow, or the day after, that this you, Eli, me, this weird and beautiful patch of earth, it's home. It's not where I planned to end up, but it's exactly where I was always meant to be. She closed her eyes. Then stay, she whispered. Forever, he said. And in that moment, bathed in moonlight and the breath of spring, the house that had once been a monument to grief became something entirely new, a sanctuary, a promise, a beginning. The next morning arrived dressed in soft gold, not the blinding kind, something gentler, as if even the sun knew to pause and witness the sacredness of this day. Alina stood on the wraparound porch, barefoot, a warm mug in hand. She could see it all, the fluttering banners, the tables adorned with hand-painted pots, tiny jars of wildflower seeds labeled, "Take something that grows." What struck her most was the sound. Not silence, but joy, laughter, footsteps, warm greetings, the hum of a new beginning. Inside, Miles helped Eli into his green shirt, the one they'd chosen together because it matched the garden. Maya, now a regular weekend guest, helped pin a leaf-shaped badge to Eli's chest. Junior garden guide, his idea. The pride in his eyes, that was all Alina. She pressed a hand to her heart. This wasn't just a reopening. It was a return to life, to joy, to herself. Guests arrived slowly at first, neighbors, teachers, parents of children with special needs. Then came strangers, caregivers, skeptics. Some entered cautiously, but left in tears, transformed. Alina stood at the gate and welcomed them, one by one. Her voice, once tentative, now rang clear and warm. "Welcome," she said, again and again, and meant it. Miles stood beside her, handing out water bottles, directions, and the occasional joke. His presence steady, grounding, like the fence posts surrounding the garden. And Eli, he led children on tours, telling them how dragon peppers were real, even if adults didn't believe it. He didn't flinch when a child cried. He didn't retreat when the crowd got loud. He stayed and shined. At noon, Alina stepped onto a small stage beneath the sycamore. She adjusted the mic and paused. "My name is Alina Royce," she began. "This house has been in my family for generations. It's known joy, heartbreak, and silence." She took a breath. For a long time, I lived in that silence. I thought healing meant disappearing. Her eyes found Miles, but then the stranger answered the wrong phone call, and he showed up anyway. She smiled. That single act of kindness unraveled everything I thought I knew, and planted something new. The crowd leaned in quiet. So today, we open these gardens not just in memory of those we've lost, but for those who stayed, who showed up, who say, "You are not alone." She gestured to the children planting sunflowers. "This is for them, for you, for anyone who's ever wondered if hope still has a place in the world. It does, and it grows here." The applause was not loud. It was better, steady, warm, real. That night, after the last car had gone, Alina, Miles, and Eli sat in the glowing greenhouse, surrounded by life. "I like today," Eli murmured, sleepy. Everyone felt safe. "You helped make that happen," Alina said, brushing his hair. "I think I want to stay here forever." She looked at Miles. "Me too." Later, in the conservatory, Alina sat on the floor with a small box in her lap. "What's that?" Miles asked. "Charlie's things," she said softly. Inside were a worn notebook, a toy compass, a backyard treasure map, and a photo of two kids in rain boots, drenched but laughing. "He used to say," she whispered, "the best adventures begin in the mud." Miles smiled. He would have loved Eli. "And built him a dragon-shaped wheelbarrow," she added. "There's still time." At the bottom of the box was a handmade card. "To Alina, you're the brave kind, the staying kind." She looked at it, then at Miles. "I want that to be us. Not just visitors in each other's lives. I want to stay." "Then stay," he whispered, taking her hand. "As long as you want." "Forever," she said. He kissed her, light at first, then deeper. A promise in every breath. And just before midnight, the last light in the house flicked off. But inside every room, the warmth remained.